Hi, as I invoked earlier today, it's very important to stand to the victims of the nuclear weapons attacks in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As we all know, it's the International Day against nuclear tests. It's very critical to remind that the atomic bombs have had a huge domino effect on people, either in Hiroshima, Nagasaki, or Chernobyl in the 1980s. The only positive thing about the two first attacks were to end the era of fascism in the Asian front and therefore ending the Second World War. Ever since then, several countries adopted the nuclear weapon. After the United States, there were the USSR, the United Kingdom, France, China, the People's Republic of China, India, Pakistan, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Some reports also that South Africa and Israel co-work to have one share warhead between the two countries. Many other countries use the nuclear energy for civil purposes. Anyways, this is a very important thing to stand for because, as many poets have said, while being asked how did they perceive the Third World War, they said, we don't know its outcome, but for sure the Fourth World War will be with rocks. Anyways, these are metaphors just to show how it is very important to stand far from the nuclear weapons because it is relevant to the future of mankind. So I spoke earlier about the working group on promoting and protecting human rights and the rule of law while counterterrorism, and this is the second topic that I want to speak about. As I mentioned in a shorter video this week, I was about to speak about the applicable laws, and the first one will be the international human rights law in this context of action. So I want to remember that the international human rights law has been established through treaties and customary international law. States can become parties to the international human rights treaties, the consequence of which is that they are obliged to act in accordance with and uphold all of the requirements, both negative and positive, imposed by this treaty, of course. So the international human rights law is also found in customary international law, which is established through state practice, which is uniform and consistent, generally applied and established over time. This is carried out by states in the belief that such practice is required by law, opinio juris. Customary international law is applicable to all states regardless of the individual treaty ratifications, norms of jus cogens, and the peremptory norms as well of the customary international law that are those accepted by the international community as a whole, which is basically a norm of no derogation being permitted, and which can be modified only by a subsequent norm of customary international law that is having the same character. So it is universally accepted that the prohibitions of torture, slavery, genocide, as well as racial discrimination and crimes against humanity and the right to self-determinations are norm of jus cogens. So any measures undertaken to implement the resolutions 2178 of 2014 and 2396 of 2017 or other Security Council resolution must comply with general human rights principles that are grounded in treaty law and customary law. This means that any measures which may limit or restrict human rights must be prescribed by law by necessary proportionate in the pursuance of legitimate aims and non-discriminatory. They should be procedurally fair and offer the opportunity of legal review as well. So the measures are provided by law or prescribed by law. It's two ways of doing it. They have to have some basis of national law. That is not, however, enough. There is an additional requirement that the quality of the law must be compatible with the rule of law. That means that laws imposing the limitations on the exercise of human rights must not be arbitrary or unreasonable, and adequate safeguards and effective remedies must be provided by law against illegal or abusive impositions or application of limitations on the several cases when we speak about the counterterrorism efforts as well. So, if I want to speak more about the human rights issue, I mean, the this type of law, in addition, has a norm to be characterized to it as a law that must be formulated with sufficient precision to enable individuals to regulate their conduct accordingly, and it must be made accessible to the public. The laws authorizing the application of restrictions should be used for precise criteria and may not confer unfurthered discretion on those charged with their execution. Finally, in a limited set of circumstances, states may also take measures to temporarily derogate from certain international human rights laws provisions. As noted by the Human Rights Committee, measures derogating from the provisions of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights that must be of an exceptional and temporary nature. Two fundamental conditions must be met. The situation must amount to a public that has emergency, in which basically we see life-threatening events at the national level, for example, and the state party must have officially proclaimed the state of emergency in this context of action. The obligation to limit any derogation to those that are strictly required by the exigencies of the situations reflect to the principle of proportionality, which is common to derogation and limitation powers. The International Refugee Law, the second one, here to speak about it, it's been coming from the 1951 Convention related to the status of the refugee and its 1967 protocol, along with regional refugee instruments. They are the core legal instruments of the international refugee regime. These instruments define the term refugee and establish an international framework for the protection of refugees and setting out as well the obligations and basic minimum standards of treatment for individuals defined as refugees. The principle of non-refoulement on this context is the cornerstone of the international refugee protection. It has been enshrined in the Article 33 of the 1951 Convention, which provides that a refugee may not be expelled or otherwise forcibly returned to a country where his or her life or freedom would be threatened based on race, religion, nationality, membership of particular social group, or political opinion. The 1951 Convention provides the notes regarding the exclusion from refugee status persons with regard to whom there are serious reasons for considering that they have committed serious crimes or heinous acts. International refugee law also permits exceptions to the principle of non-refoulement where an individual has been determined to pose a danger to the security of the country or to its community in certain specific circumstances, given the potentially serious consequences. However, the fact of denying refugee status or protection from refoulement to a person who otherwise may face harm upon return to his or her country of origin, these provisions are to be interpreted in a restrictive manner. Finally, to speak also about the international humanitarian law, the third one, international humanitarian law is also known to refresh as the law of war or the law of the armed conflict and is applicable to both situations of international or non-international armed conflict. These rules are usually enshrined in the four Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols, as well as in customary of rules of international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law is a set of rules which seek basically for humanitarian reasons to limit the effects of armed conflicts, and it protects persons, civilians who are basically not no longer participating in the hostilities as well as the fighters of the combat, and restricts the means and methods of warfare. What international humanitarian law pertains to situations of armed conflicts, international human rights law, including the core civil and political rights enshrined in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, is applicable at all times. And we can understand from that the concern for all the persons with only very limited derogations permitted. So, therefore, in situations that meet the thresholds of definition of a non-international or international armed conflict, international human rights and international humanitarian law apply concurrently, and their different protections are complementary, not mutually exclusive, nevertheless. So both international humanitarian law and international human rights law share a common nucleus of non-derogable rights and the common purpose of protecting human life and dignity. And here we speak about the substantial overlap in the application of these two distinct bodies of law. Next time, I'm going to speak about the working group on promoting and protecting human rights and the rule of counterterrorism. I will go further on the right to liberty and freedom of movement, which will lead us also to speak about the deprivation of liberty and restrictions on the movement of individuals within territories of states, as well as critical topics that are related to preventing an individual from leaving a state, and as well as preventing the individual from entering or transiting through the other state. There are also several other topics that could be mentioned in this context of action, as we do speak about the collective expulsions that are strictly prohibited, and they will lead us also to speak about the reasonable grounds on believing on entries being sought in order to commit or not acts of terrorism for basically an individual or a terrorist that is on the watch list, which makes a lot of disambiguation when it comes to defining each law, coming from the international standards to the national laws, and all the conflicts that this creates. Finally, we will speak through guidance on what is the best prescription about the right to enter for each individual to their own country. So this is pretty much a summary of the next topic that I will speak about while coming to define the guidance to states on human rights compliance responses to the threat posed by foreign terrorist fighters, which is a very important topic that has been in concordance also with the reports that has been launched by the United Nations Secretary General last April related to building a global counterterrorism strategy. And the topic is ongoing presently with all the issues that we have at the level of the Middle East, especially when we speak about the high conflicts that are ongoing and raging in Syria and Yemen, in example. I will speak about a substantial synthesis regarding the report about moving away from the death penalty that is basically based on the arguments and trends and perspective. So this is basically a research that has been done between 2012 and 2015, where the OHCHR organized in New York a series of knowledge events on moving away from the death penalty, and these events basically brought together representatives of member states, academia, and civil society, as well as legal experts and victims of wrongful convictions, consisting of a series of articles and publications that reflects the diversity of geographical experiences in this context: Africa, the Americas, and the Caribbean, as well as Asia and Europe, with articles exploring the compelling arguments relevant in deciding in favor of moving away from the death penalty. Despite the greatest justice efforts, wrongful convictions are simply not avoidable. Capital punishment is too final and irrevocable. It prohibits the correction of mistakes by the Justice Departments and leaves no room for human error with the gravest of consequences. course, we all know about the genesis of the death penalty that has been developed ever since the end of World War II, especially when we speak about the communist regimes. Uh, Unfortunately, responses in democratic countries to this kind of punishments that were sometimes just related to political oppression has been emancipating to the criminal systems for several Western countries, in example, the United States. And we have understand that the death penalty is not imposed in a just equal way, and those sacrificed on the altar of retributive justice are almost always those who are vulnerable because of their poverty, minority status, or mental disability. Not all victims and their family members support the death penalty, and even for those who seek it, long delays and the small percentage of executions actually carried out often cause frustration and they delay the closure. Furthermore, as long as death penalty is existing, it can be misused to target particular social groups or political opponents, which comes back to what I have been speaking about earlier from the experience of Stalinism, in example. I will speak furthermore about another topic. This is the fourth topic from the UN-related work that I will invoke today, related basically to the recognitions by the International Criminal Courts about what states parties has established in 1998. So basically, it has been established in the International Criminal Court the adoption of the Rome status, and this is what I want to speak about as a fourth topic herein reflecting basically the determination to put to impunity for the most serious crimes concerning the international community. 2018 is a significant year for the court as it is marking the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome status. So, international and regional organization with the crucial support of state parties, other states, international and regional organizations, and civil society basically have fully pledged a leading international institution and regional organization in this context to fight against impunity as well as an integral part of a more specific and peaceful, secure international system. The court today has become a permanent beacon of fight and basically a symbol of hope for the victims of horrific crimes. This joins a little bit the third topic that I spoke earlier because we have crimes against humanity, and it's very important to mention this, and that crime when it comes, for example, to issues such as we said in just for example in the Balkans genocides with the ethnic cleansing that we saw in the 1990s in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Anyways, I will come back to speak furthermore about this topic in a further video. So, as we move furthermore in the year 2018-2019, it's very critical to mention the importance of the action within this exercise because, as we all know, the definition of the 2020s, the action of the 2020s comes from here. The first pictures, or if you want, the diaspora of the 2030s is also from these actions, and therefore the imaginative project of the 2040s starts from here as well. So act right now to build the 2020s, to lay the 2030s, and to imagine the 2040s. It's an action that has to be taken from a global perspective. Now I will move to a more topic of a domestic nature in the United States to go back also to the importance of these 2018-2019 for the United States as a leader in the UN arena, and it's a very constructive and make or break years. If I want to bring a topic of politics, this year is very important to give us a first preliminary ideas regarding the 2020 presidential elections in the United States. For right now, following up with the governance of President Trump, a lot of things has been done the way that it has been laid out in the program, and it's very important to go further in analyzing the governance. the context of the governance, what has been done ever since January 2017 in the context of governance. And it's very important to mention that President Trump has moved forward with several context of actions in the United States, and this is very constructive. And it has not been even 2 years in this perspective, and this is very important. Now, if I want to speak about a potential subjective way of seeing this election, I still think that it could be uh, a Trump versus Hillary Clinton or a Trump versus Biden right now. Very important also in this year 2018-2019 in the federal level to speak about the congressional elections and to focus on to the bipartisan effort that is also a part of the preliminary draft, if you want, of the presidential election from both Republican and Democrats. Is very important in this context of action for the sake of the function of the Hill in Washington D.C. to invoke the importance of the congressionals. There are some ideas that comes from the group Congress for tomorrow that brings several parties' opinions. But like I said, it's very important to synthesize the informations in this framework and to stand with a political constructive debate that involves either parties or as well third parties. Uh, in the federal aspect, when it comes to the senatorial races, I do believe on the importance of several races that could help improve the diaspora of the federal politics. And I'm here also standing with the race of Senator Gillibrand from the state of New York. And so I think it's very important to go on to the constructive way of doing things. Like I said, from this point, the state of New York is a leader, and having it as an important actor at the level of DC consolidate the importance, of course, between the United States from a federal perspective and the state of New York. And I think Senator Gillibrand have done several outstanding work in this context of action, and it's very needed right now in a time where the bipartisan work is very critical. Finally, before speaking about further topics in politics, after invoking the federal level, getting back on something that came across my eyes in Twitter, I saw the comments that were between Donald Trump Jr. and Chelsea Handler. And to my opinion, it's very important to encourage free speech. I have not unfollowed Donald Trump Jr. from Twitter, neither his brother, Eric Trump. I do remember that 3 accounts were unfollowed from my Twitter on May the 25th. And I am keeping an eye on that as well because it's a sort of an anomaly once again when we speak about this context of action. But to get back to this, I do appreciate the endeavors done also by Donald Trump Jr., who is 4 years older than me and is also somebody to look after his achievements at the Trump's organizations in terms of business, in terms of bringing basically a liberal approach to the context of the organization. And to me, it's very important. I follow up with this news, and it's not needed to be just in Twitter. Like I said, Twitter is a platform where news comes and goes. Uh, for me, the tweets I've read from Chelsea Handler that I've seen one time in a show in New York in December 2016 uh, reflect the opinion of a journalist, and I do encourage the freedom of speech. Like I said, it's very important to stand with that matter when it comes to that. Even though I do believe, and this is another topic once again, that journalism has to move and move and move forward because keeping talking about the issues versus Trump all the time, non-stop. Like I said, we stayed in a vicious circle for several months now. Just go ahead and check on Google if you want to type, for example, Trump and the presidential inauguration of 2017. You're not going to find any link under Google, which you could find, for example, in the case of other presidents. And I think it's not a way America works. This is again not a lawyer of the Trump family, but somebody who speaks from a very objective way, as I mentioned earlier in this speech, by commending the role of Donald Trump in Washington D.C. as a POTUS and the role of Donald Trump Jr. at the Trump Organization in New York. From what we see in terms of work, in terms of ciphers for business, and that's very important to analyze. For the other parts, the people that are criticizing current movements, this is part of freedom of speech. But it's better, of course, if the American can gather and speak higher level speech to move forward within a constructive politics, if you want, because that's what's gonna build, like I said, the 20s in terms of action, as I mentioned earlier, for the global scale. Statewide, I mean, to get back really about the major state elections, I do see here the gubernatorial race in the state of New York. Once again, this is from a state perspective. I do believe that Cynthia Nixon has an opportunity to play in the debate here in the state of New York for the next governor race in the Empire State. Several local races have been taking place in the region of New York, speaking about that in 2017, 2018, including the gubernatorial race in the state of New Jersey and a plethora of local races, starting with New York City and the five boroughs: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, as well as major cities in northern New Jersey, Newark, and Jersey City. All these cities that I mentioned and boroughs had their mayoral and borough presidential elections. Now, 2018, 2019 is very important, as I mentioned, to sum up for the diaspora of the 2020 presidential elections, the 2018 congressional elections, and several gubernatorial races as well. To speak now about other topics, as I mentioned earlier, we spoke about politics, we spoke about journalism, and about the Web 2.0, and several things on it. I can move up to also speak about theater. Oh, yeah, by the way, the actor Woods have also made a comment regarding this exchange of discussion, I guess, between Donald Trump Jr. and Chelsea Handler, and I do remember Mr. Woods from his roles in Hollywood, especially Once Upon a Time in America and Casino, and also another movie, Mississippi. I don't remember the whole title, but I think it's also very important to voice your opinion. Either you're a Republican, either you believe in the Democrats as well as on a third party, as well as if you have a bipartisan way of seeing things. I think it's very important to work to the constructive debate. And once again, I mean, hate speech, we speak about this. I speak about this from my UN NGO related work every day. We cannot advance further in the world if we don't abolish hate speech. Here in America, maybe it's not shown in trenches, as we see, unfortunately, in zones of war, such as Yemen, Syria, Libya, or other countries, but it's shown from a mental way. And I think America has come to the time where it's very important to shift away from the idealistic way that the industrial revolution have created things. Think about a B plan. And I commend again President Trump for having this idea and concretizing, making it concrete. Several Democrats maybe in the past have thought about the idea, but how to put it on the field was the added value that I didn't find, and that now Trump is putting on the field, and that's very important. It's like, when you are with your kids outside and an adult meets an adult with his other kids, and the kids start talking to each other, and the adults have to find a way to hypocritically talk to each other, has been adopted on the day-to-day basis of you get your paycheck of the industrial revolution thought. You working for this and that corporate, and this is a political way of doing things since 1830. It has been developed industrially perfectly, but like I say, it has just demolished the social aspect. Just very important thoughts about this, and I think to see it realistically is very important in order to be very constructive from the societal aspect. The economy is working back again now with President Trump ever since January 2017. Considerable efforts ever since that time. I mean, it's been, like I said, less than 2 years, but a lot of things that could be further more improved in a societal basis will come. This is part of the Agenda 2030 of the United States, between quotes if you want, and that will build also the conditions of the 2040s, but one at a time. So as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, these elections are very important, make or break, not only for a winner from a Republican Party or a Democratic Party, but for how we can achieve from a bipartisan speech and a multi-partisan speech, including the third parties as well. Topics like fixing the societal aspect. And I know that from experience because I lived in several continents, mostly in Morocco, France, and the United States. So I have seen several ways of thought, several cultures, and even in the United States, I've lived in several areas from the northeast to the Mexican borders, which made me almost see the Mexican culture as well as the fact that I have been in Italy for several months while I was living in France. So, spoke about Woods earlier. To get back, speaking about theater, about my opinion on to switch to another topic about the solo movie of Star Wars that has been released this summer. I think this space western has been also very explanatory to the story when it comes to how Han Solo met Chewbacca, and I think this is something that was obviously coming in this new stories that has been put by the new producer. Nevertheless, like I said, the role of Episode 9 will be make or break to understand the full story of Episode 7 and 8 to get back to another topic. But still, while speaking about Solo, the movie itself, it was very new to see another sort of evil, not just the Empire, but also about the story of Crimson Dawn. And it is sort of a lack of a gang evil, like resembling a little bit the Hut clans that has been exposed in this movie, as well as the comeback of Darth Maul. Many things in Legends were speaking about Darth Maul not being dead, even being cut in half by Kenobi in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. But here we go, we have the confirmation through the movies that he's still alive. Like I said, I mean, how much more added things to the Star Wars, how much more condiments to make it edible? That's the very important question in this context. So I'm looking forward to watching Episode 9 and also seeing if this franchise wants also to expand to other movies between the episodes, especially between the space between Episode 3 and Episode 4, where we have a considerable amount of years, especially speaking about the life of Obi-Wan Kenobi in Tatooine during his years of exile, as well as what I heard, something about the bounty hunter Boba Fett's life. We'll see how things is gonna evolve. But anyways, I mean, things stays cool, stays beautiful as far as they have an in train that explain the whole movie. So looking forward for Episode 9 in this context. Speaking about sports, to move up in this video, another topic. So we all followed the great FIFA World Cup this summer, and I want to play some words in French, honoring the French team because honestly, it has been a great achievement that France have done. Donc, félicitations pour la France. Pour la première fois, une équipe marque 4 buts en finale de la Coupe du Monde depuis 1970. C'est un grand exploit, c'est une grande finale qui a eu 6 buts. C'est aussi la première fois qu'on a droit à 6 buts dans une finale de Coupe du Monde depuis 1966. Donc il y a beaucoup de choses à dire sur cette finale et sur le style de jeu de l'équipe de France, qui est devenue maintenant un géant du football mondial, 2 titres mondiaux, tout comme l'Argentine et l'Uruguay, éliminés respectivement par les Bleus en huitième et en quart de finale. Euh, les Bleus ont démontré vraiment la solidarité d'un groupe, la jeunesse aussi, parce qu'il y a des joueurs qui peuvent aller au-delà de 2 ou 3 autres Coupes du Monde, dépendant de leur performance future. Moi, j'ai notamment remarqué le grand effort qui a été fait par certains joueurs, surtout Griezmann, Mbappé, Pogba, Varane. Je pense qu'ils ont été nécessaires dans la construction du jeu, surtout Griezmann, Pogba Varane qui avaient déjà joué la Coupe du Monde au Brésil en 2014, de laquelle ils ont appris, je pense, beaucoup de choses, surtout Varane avec le but allemand en quart de finale à l'époque, et Griezmann qui a explosé avec Pogba lors de cette Coupe du Monde. Pogba avait été le meilleur jeune au Brésil. Maintenant, c'est Mbappé qui a été élu le meilleur jeune en Russie. Donc, je pense que c'était très important pour le football français de gravir des échelons lors de cette Coupe du Monde et de réaliser une grosse performance. Très important aussi de dire que la Croatie a été une très grosse équipe en atteignant la finale, ce qui est l'un des plus grands exploits du sport croate, et aussi la Belgique qui a laissé quand même la meilleure impression de son histoire avec la troisième place. So this was basically a summary of the impression about France' victory in Russia, which is the biggest sports event of this year, and also the season is getting back already in action. As you know, France will play Germany in the UEFA Nations League. What a clash to start the international calendar 2018-2019 with, and this is one of the make or breaks game between the running world champion and the world champion of 4 years ago, 2014. So very important. There is also several individual awards to get back to the UEFA Best Player. My opinion, as I follow soccer as my main hobby, is that the UEFA Best Player this year, that is between Ronaldo, Modric, and Salah. I see Ronaldo very strong getting it because he's been the top scorer of the UEFA Champions League with 15 goals, leading him to his fifth title. Even though I'm a supporter of Real Madrid, I will get back to that later. For the FIFA, the Best Men's Award, that will be rewarded in September instead of December, which will be the date for the Ballon d'Or. For the very first time, I think we will have a different winner than Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi. This award has been given since 1991. He was the FIFA World Players of the Year until 2009. Then it merged with the Ballon d'Or as a FIFA Ballon d'Or, and now it's called the FIFA Men's the Best Award. I think, even like I said, I'm a Real Madrid fan. I will say Atletico Madrid's mentor, Antoine Griezmann, is well placed to win it this September. Nevertheless, there is competitions coming from Cristiano Ronaldo and Kylian Mbappe in this context of action, as well as Luka Modric a little bit and Lionel Messi slightly. The Ballon d'Or, that will be a different story. Again, we could have 2 different winners, one of the FIFA the best and another one for the Ballon d'Or. And here, because it should come in the beginning of December, there are a few more months to catch up, but the World Cup have had a big impact nevertheless. Then there is the Champions League in this order, then everything else, especially the official competitions as the Europa League or the national domestic. The Griezmann has chances also for the Ballon d'Or at the end of the year, but they will be in this context depending how Cristiano Ronaldo will play with Juventus. A lot of competition from him. Also, how Kylian Mbappe will play with Paris Saint-Germain. Lionel Messi have very, very few chances in this context of action, as well as Luka Modric again. But we'll see. It's different titles, and there is also other titles that could be awarded differently than Ronaldo and Messi, which is the World Soccer Magazine Player of the Year. that could go maybe to another player except Messi and Ronaldo. But in this kind of award, I remember that Xavi got it in 2010, who was the only interference between Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi in the World Soccer Magazine Player of the Year. Several other awards, but those are the main ones that I mentioned. Uh, so looking forward. But from a perspective of supporting the team, even if these stars, Ronaldo plays for Juventus, Griezmann plays for the rival of the city of Madrid, Atletico Madrid. Messi plays for Barcelona, the eternal rival in Spanish football. Pogba plays in Manchester United, and Mbappe in Paris Saint-Germain, Hazard in Chelsea. My support is always with Real Madrid. That's why I want to put some words in Spanish here for the team. Para mí es importante temporada de ver Real Madrid jugar al nivel de la Champions. La Eurocopa es el más importante objetivo por el club. Ganarla por la cuarta vez consecutiva van a estar un resultado histórico, efímero para Real Madrid. También el segundo objetivo será la Liga Española, tercer la Copa del Rey y finalmente la Copa Mundial de Clubes en los Emiratos Árabes Unidos. Real Madrid tiene tantas estrellas para obtener este objetivo con jugadores del Mundial como Varane, que fue uno de los únicos jugadores que ganan la Copa Mundial y la Champions en la misma temporada, el mismo año precisamente. También lo hacen en el pasado Khedira al alemán con Real Madrid de Alemania, Roberto Carlos con Brasil y Real Madrid y Caramba con Francia y Real Madrid. En el pasado, 7 jugadores del Bayern Múnich con Franz Beckenbauer y 6 otros lo hacen con el Bayern Múnich en Alemania en 1974. Importante de decir también que el juego de Benzema y Bale es más importante por el nivel de los delanteros. La experiencia de la defensa con Varane, Sergio Ramos, con Nacho, con Dani Carvajal, porteros gran competencia con Thibaut Courtois y también Keylor Navas, mucho importante por el equipo. Van a hablar de la importancia de Marcelo y de Casemiro y de Modric como mediocampistas y Cruz también. Ahora, con suerte por Real Madrid por esta temporada para ganar los 4 títulos por el club, la Champions, la Liga, la Copa del Rey, el Mundial de Clubes, a la Madrid. Like I said, I am somebody who dedicates time off and hobbies to sports because it's something that I like to do after work, after professional activities. I do like also track and field. There is very important meeting to follow the aftermath of the Diamond League this year in Zurich and Brussels. In the Leipzig round, there is the famous Weltklasse meeting of Zurich, and finally the second half of the final of the Diamond League that is basically in Brussels at König Boudewijn Stadion, Stade du Roi Baudouin, the Memorial Ivo van Dam. I want to say hi to my friends in Morocco, Aziz Dawda. غادي نهضر بالعربية. هذه مناسبة طيبة باش نتذكروا سيدي عزيز الذكريات الكبيرة ديال الألعاب القوى المغرب. هذه تقريبا 14 سنة باش شفنا هشام الدروج ربح الألعاب الأولمبية في أثينا في 1500 وال 5000 متر، اللي هو إنجاز ماشي مغربي، عالمي وأولمبي وتاريخي، لأن هشام الدروج بعد 80 سنة مورا الفنلندي بافو نورمي أصبح أول عداء كيفوز بالمسافتين في الألعاب الأولمبية. وهذا إنجاز يضرب له التاريخ حتى الآن. هشام القروج بالإنجازات والأرقام القياسية ديالو اللي ما زال محطوطة لحد الآن، هو أيضا كيأكد وكيرسخ على قوة البطل وعلى الإنجازات اللي حضر. لأن هشام القروج فوق عداء فوق الأعداء الآخرين من خلال الإنجازات ديالو. انه ديك الطريقه لا كونسيستونس ديال 13 عام الخدمه دائما بنفس المستوى، ماشي الثالث ولا الرابع، الاول كيفكر بحال ميسي ورونالدو. وهذا صراحه قدوه للعدائين والرياضيين في المغرب، وهذا شي حاجه مهمه ناكد عليها. وكنتمنى المغرب نشوف عدائين في المستوى قبل من بطولات العالم في الدوحه، من دابا يبداو يبينوا لنا نتائج ايجابيه باش نزيدوا القدام. بالنسبه لكره القدم غادي نرجع شويه على المنتخب والطريقه باش لعب في كاس العالم ديال روسيا. مهم باش ناكد على الفيت ان التعادل مع اسبانيا كانت نتيجه مزيانه. صراحه راه المغرب رجع من 20 سنه بدون تاهل كاس العالم. حتى الهزيمه مع البرتغال ب0-1 بحد ذاتها من ناحيه اللعب كانت مزيانه، النتائج كانوا كيبانوا حسن، مي هذه ديجا كما قلت بارابور لا ترافيرسي دو ديزير شيء مزيان. دابا خص الفرقه تركز في المستقبل. قطر كتثبت من دابا وقبل منها كاينه كاس افريقيا. ومهم الاشاره ايضا للانديه المغربيه كيفاش طوروا المسائل ديالهم باش يوليو حتى هما كيلعبوا بطريقه محترفه. الرجاء الوداد وبركان مازالين كيزيدوا لقدام في افريقيا، وحتى الجديده بالطريقه اللي لعبات في لوبومباشي مع مازيمبي، وحده من كبر الفرق في افريقيا. تعادل 1-1 تماك من سوسيتي سبورتيف بروفيسيونيل بحال بومباشي تو بويسون انجلوبير مازيمبي. كيأكد اوسي ان الانديه فاقت، ماشي غير رجاء الوداد، حتى انديه اخرى فايقه. ملي كتشوف جديده كتمشي تلعب ضد مازيمبي اللي بتاريخه الكبير وتعادل معاه 1-1 تماك، سا مونتر كو مزيان. مي خص الواحد ما يوقفش، خص الواحد يزيد قدام. هادشي ماشي غير العاب القوى والكره، حتى الرياضات الاخرين. ونتمناو داكشي اللي شفنا في الالعاب المتوسطيه ديال طاراغون نشوفوه ان شاء الله في طوكيو في 2020. لان شفنا رياضيين في الكاراتيه، في التايكواندو، في رياضات اخرين كيربحوا ميداليات. لو نيفو ميديتيرانيان ماشي هو النيفو اولمبيك، مي تحسن كيجي رويدا. وباش نكمل هضرتي على المغرب كنأكد الأهمية ديال الوقوف وراء صاحب الجلالة محمد السادس نصره الله من أجل تنظيم الوقوف على تنظيم كأس العالم ديال 2030 ورجعوها لإفريقيا مرة أخرى. لأن كنظن بأن هذا يكون تنظيم مهم من ناحية الاستراتيجية بالنسبة للمغرب والجزائر وتونس اللي باغيين حتى هما ينظموا ويبينوا بأن منطقة المغرب العربي ومشروعها ديال التبادل الحر كان دائما في الأولويات ديال السياسة المغربية. وكنظن بأنه غادي يكون هناك واحد المقوم كبير، لأن التظاهرات الرياضية بحال الألعاب الأولمبية وكأس العالم للفيفا ما يمكن لهاش تبقى تنظم دائما في الدول اللي نظمتها منذ البداية. يعني خصنا ندوزو لشي حاجة باش نأكدوا النكهة العالمية ديال هاد التظاهرات باش يتنظموا في الدول اللي حتى هي تطورات كثير. وكنظن بان المغرب الجزائر وتونس بامكانهم يقدموا واحد الملف جيد للفوز خلال دورة 2030. وشكرا. So to get back also to, as I was speaking about sports in Arabic, very important to speak about the importance of playing sports for development. I will get back to reportoriate whenever in time the topic about the sports event that could be hosted in the United States. Right now it's very important to focus on the two main events, the FIFA World Cup 2026 and the Olympics 2028. And I will speak furthermore about the possibility of increasing and enhancing the infrastructure within this context of action. So stay tuned. We're gonna get back to speak about more topics within the next video. And very important, like I said, to focus on 2018, 2019 as a make or break year because this is the sine qua non condition for the 2020s, the 2030s, and beyond. Thank you for listening.